Hello and welcome to the 73rd episode of NEOHUMAN podcast. I'm Agha Bahari, a Dogologist on Twitter and Instagram, and you can follow this show at liveinlimbo.com, YouTube, iTunes, BitChute, and a whole bunch of other places. Today with me, I have Joshua Michie. Welcome to NEOHUMAN podcast, Josh.
Well, thanks for having me, bud.
Hey man, Josh is an old friend, old schoolmate, I have to say. But before getting into any of that, I just want to show our audience, because you're not going to see this glorious background that I'm using on Zoom because of the setup. This is a Beeple crap background for those of you who can't see the video. And this is a COVID killer kind of an operation that is happening. So maybe at some point I can figure out how this can be constantly visible to our audience. All right, man, let's start with the work you've done, the lives you've lived. And, I start with that. I didn't know why in the beginning, but it's very important for people to have a context that where what you're saying is coming from. So let's start with that, and then we'll take it from there.
Sure. You want to hear the journey?
Let's do it, man. Yeah.
All right, cool. I was the art kid in school, in like high school. And this is like a long time ago. And then man, that was like, I gotta say, I really have to preface this is clearly like before internet or like the ability to find information, and I grew up in a rural nowhere, like on the foothills of the mountains, Rocky Mountains. There's nothing out there. I was the kid who like drew.
That's in Alberta.
In Alberta, Canada, in a small town called Edson. I definitely gravitated towards like the art electives. That's pretty much all I did, was just draw all the time. And then, I think just because it attracts the wallflowers, would be that kid who would start getting into like Dungeons and Dragons. And, I definitely wasn't getting laid. That's for sure. But I love drawing.
Well, I bet that has changed.
Yeah, right. Oh man, it's been a while, man. Anyways, like my parents really fostered the art thing. Like they would get me into like I don't know, there were classes that you could get into, like you'd go to guitar class, you'd go to like drawing class, like outside of extracurricular stuff. Anyways, so then I like big gamer as well, like hardcore gamer. It was like the only escape out here. I definitely did not vibe with the country dudes. They don't like guys like me. So went to college eventually, went to fine art because like you think, oh, that's what I want to do. Like, because it was the only thing in your head. I didn't know that there was a design. It was like arts and crafts out here, right? Like you go to the farmer's market and then you'd see like designs by Trish or something. And you'd like, I don't want to make like, wood things.
That's what I'm looking for. Designed by Trish.
Or designed by Karen, So then I dropped out. Like it was a brutal year. Fine art, as in like legit. I liked art history, but I really hated the actual application of the art practice. Because it's a world where you find out very quickly that like art, really like the fine art world, is really just, at least in my opinion, a place to shelter your wealth. It's not really, it doesn't really necessarily say anything. It seems mostly about an industry.
It's a business.
Yeah, it's a business, and it's not what you think it is when you're a kid, right? So dropped out, was like crazy depressed, because that was like the thing that I wanted to do. And then joined the oil industry and literally worked at like a sulfur and brimstone, not joking, like a sulfur processing plant out in Edson, where I spent a year smelling like burnt matches. You do like a 12 or 14 hour shift. And I did that for a year. And the good news about that though, was I had time to like get bored. There's always a moment in your shift where you'd get there's huge train cars that you get like a tiny little train engine. I mean, like a one person, little tiny machine that you'd like push 6 cars up, and then you'd fill the cars up with raw sulfur or like dried sulfur, and you'd be in there for 2 or 3 hours. So I just like read tons of books. It was the only time in my life, I think, where I where I was able to read something like War and Peace and get away with it. Like that was a monumental, dry as shit,
Right.
book. And then eventually, and they always come into the city. Edson's like 2 hours away from Edmonton, and would hang out with like my university friends. One of my friends was related to a president of BioWare, or a creative director at BioWare. And I
That's
mean,
a
like,
gaming company.
yeah, gaming company. I mean, world class. And at the time, they had done like Star Wars, Knights of the Old Republic, which was like one of my all-time favorite games, Neverwinter Nights. And they got me into this office space, and it was the first time. I mean, I think we all sort of get this. I hope I hope people get this, where you kind of discover your purpose, where you're like, oh shit, like a blue flame turns on, you're like, you can see the path, it just kind of reveals itself. We're walking through this office, and once you get up to the creative space, at the time it's totally different now, they got a new building, but the old building, they would get like interior designers to design the like office spaces as the like ship for Mass Effect. Like you'd go into the ship to go to work. Like for nerds, game designers, it's like a mecha, man. I just, it blew my mind. There's something like this, and it's just like a huge industry. So I couldn't even like make words. I was so excited, and was like, how do I get it? How do I? And he told,
How old were you at the time?
I was pretty, I was like 20, I'm going to say 21 or 22, actually. Like I'd say pretty late in the game. I never really wanted to go to university in the first place. And in hindsight, I would say if I could do anything over again, I would have probably just spent my 19th and 20th year traveling the world. I think that would have been a much better time I think that's what everyone should do, to be honest. Just give school a break and go see the world for a bit, and then like figure out what you kind of want to do from those experiences maybe. And then if you have to go back to school, hopefully I think that would just give you a clearer purpose. Anyways, so then I asked the guy, and he was like, well, it's a good thing you got out of fine art, because we don't hire fine artists. It's a totally different methodology. Like we're a design focused studio. And what that means is, we have a product to build, and it's a business. And in order to do that, there's a different way of approaching it. I think like when you're an artist, you're looking at your worldview and you've got a clear commentary. You might be able to do some of that as a creative director, or maybe as like a game, like creator, like the guy who comes like a visionary. But that's such a hard thing. That's, like you're so high up the ladder. You're an exception to the rule. For the most part, it is about having like a shared vision and idea and driving towards that. It's design thinking and the problem solving, and like iterating a lot and getting to something that I think often has like a very clear, like you kind of know what the end is going to look like. Whereas I feel like art is mostly exploratory. You might have an intention and you work towards that or with that intention, but often maybe what your initial idea was and what the final product looks like, or what that final manifestation can be, completely different. I think they may sound similar, but there's a very clear difference.
No, there is a contradiction at the core of it. Absolutely.
Yeah. So he told me like straight up, go to go do like a design course at a university, and then get good, go to the Vancouver Film School at their game design program, be the best in there, because that's where we recruit from right out of school. Like, and so they gave me like that was such a clear step, like it wasn't a vague, like vague advice. It was very like tactical, and I prefer it that way when I'm trying to figure out what the hell to do, with like grand directions. I prefer figuring out like baby steps, because that just keeps things from becoming overwhelming. So then I did 3 years of school, went back to Grant McEwen College, I think it's a university now, and took the digital design program. And that intention was to become a game design concept artist. Like that to me was like the thing that just lined up, you know, like I was the kid who was already sketching game stuff anyways, just seemed like a logical step. However, in that process, I met a teacher, his name's Joe Raffa. And he was definitely, I think, one of my like first, maybe, yeah, definitely one of my first mentors. And he just kind of like saw that I gravitated towards 3D stuff and animation. But like I also really gravitated towards like graphic design stuff at the time. And in that would have been like 2005-ish, like somewhere around there. Um, that was in the era of like the Flash, you know, like Flash
Mhm.
animations and Flash websites, which is definitely not what websites look like today. They were like overly interactive and mostly animation driven. And I really loved what was going on there. There's also like a subculture of creatives that, you know, because there were no rules
Mhm.
and it was a technology space, people were really coming up with like wild ideas. It wasn't as rigid as it is now. It's definitely like business now. Though I'm sure there's some UI UX designers out there that would disagree with me. And he taught me After Effects, and I'm telling you, like the first time I did my little like 5-second animation, I've got it somewhere still up on my like Facebook wall. It's terrible, but I keep it up there for that reason. It literally was like a total game changer for me. Like once you hit 0 on your keyboard, which is the like preview render, and saw it move, it was like, I think this is what I want to do now.
Mhm.
This is like way cooler, and it definitely satisfies my like OCD, ADD, you know, like ADHD kind of behavior, just to be able to do like 5-10 seconds work, a minute of work, and then press 0 and watch it. Like you're just getting like a dopamine hit every time. So it's addictive. It's a naturally addictive process. Um, and at the time too, he owned an animation company, or like a post house VFX kind of 3D animation company. So we kept in touch. I loved his course. But I would say like generally though, I'm a person that I wasn't going to school to kind of find my way. I think I had a very clear a goal and objective of what I wanted. So there's a lot of schooling that I just kind of like whatever. I don't want to learn how to code. I don't need to know how to code because I know I'm going to be moving into like the motion design stream. First it was like game design, but then it was like this is clearly a better fit. Let's go there. Um, so as we're getting closer to graduation, or like in our last year, my friends and I are kind of like, we don't know anyone in the industry at all. Like there's a complete void between what the students are doing and what the industry was looking. And I think like the faculty, I think most schools are like this. The faculty consults the teachers or industry. The industry says, we have these fill in the blanks. Like we need these people to do the production. So teach that. And that's pretty much like what most curriculums are kind of focused around. But there's no relationship building with the students. So the only time a student really ever sees the industry is at their graduation, you know, portfolio. And there's there's the scarcity mentality. There's so much fear because you're like, shit, I'm out of school. I've
Yeah.
got to get a job, and it's got to be in this thing that I just spent 3 years of my life or more doing. So there's a lot of like, there's a weird energy there, and you know, like the industry is always kind of like lurking in the background, like ooh, like yes, good, here's my business card, and then you know maybe we'll do something, but I don't know, it's not the best. So we
No, it
created
is
something
not. Yes. I agree.
because I think like anyone in the industry that goes to a school is there because there's a part of them, I think, that wants to be a mentor themselves, or they want to nurture talent. Not always, or of course, you know, they just need cheap labor and they need to go in
Are
there.
you
So
talking
that
about
there's
teachers?
industry when it
Oh,
comes to
industry.
this, like, yeah,
Because for
connecting.
kids, you know, when you go to a school in your 20s, you have no idea what the fuck you want to do.
No, exactly, right? Like you're kind of like, I did this thing that I seem to be predisposed to doing and was getting a lot of positive reinforcement for, so I'm going to do more of that. Yeah, and then you go to school and I don't know, you might try it, you might not fit it out. You'll probably, some people are like me where you just drop out, you're like, that wasn't good, and then you know maybe you'll find something. I don't know. Yeah, it's definitely chaos.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we created the Design Students Organization, and it was 5 of us, 6 of us, and we just like created fundraisers and parties and did our best to we went over the top with our like launch. They have a really nice stage in the old McEwen University, so we like made a massive projection and like posters, and like we just tried to make this huge event out of nothing. And industry got wind of it and they showed up. So they're all like, and the theater was packed. It was like a 300-person theater that was just brimmed. Like there were people standing outside looking in. And I'd say like, it was probably like 15% that was of the industry. And it got everyone jazzed. A lot of students were really excited because this was something they could do beyond just their like homework, and the stress of trying to get those projects done on time. And it connected a lot of people. Like in the school, the departments are very segregated. There's like photography, illustration, the web design, digital guys, and then like the film guys. And then the industrial, or I guess like the exhibit design, the people who do like retail space design. It's sort of like it was sort of a program that was like interior design meets like retail spaces. So we could unite all the departments, or at least the students, so they could build relationships with themselves and get friendships beyond just their inner class. And then we connected with the GDC, which is the Graphic Designers of Canada, kind of not-for-profit, and started connecting up with that. I had a lot of fun doing that. Probably the most fun of my my time at that school was really just organizing that and getting fundraisers and connecting. And Edmonton is really good for that. There's a lot of like small businesses. There's a lot of bars and clubs that like students spend money drinking. So if you can find something that creates value for them, they're like, here, like the spaces were given away to free. We didn't have to pay for anything. If anything, they would like give us discounts, like just because when we held a thing, we could pull in 200-300 people. So that's like a great thing for any club owner or event space organizer. And that was a lot of fun. And then we had a documentary out of school, looking for work. Joe came up to me and said, hey, like we're doing this documentary on dinosaurs in the southern Alberta. There's a place called Drumheller, and it's like a world famous what's it called?
Fossils.
Yeah, like
Right.
fossils,
Mhm.
paleontology.
Right.
Like all sorts of crazy dinosaur discoveries happening. And they were doing a documentary on a new T-Rex type kind of creature. And it was like a full CG Discovery Channel thing. So we got on board with that. I was so revved to just be like a compositor. Like a compositor is someone who takes the assets. So you don't make the 3D stuff. The 3D assets come in layers. So you might just have the dinosaur walking by itself. And then there's like 5 different, there's like a shadow pass, a color pass, like a motion vector pass. There's all different passes that you as the compositor are given, and then you layer them up and then fix them together. The reason you do that in the I guess like film, animation, compositing, VFX world is because those renders, especially back then, were insanely expensive, like very long to do. Each frame could take more than like 10-15 minutes. A really heavy could go into half hour. You'd need to get like a render farm, so it gets very expensive to be able to, keep those margins down. So you split things up so that if you have to, and you will have to re-render something because it takes so long to do all this stuff. It keeps it so that you only have to maybe render one layer instead of all of that at once, right? So if you screw up somewhere, you're not ruining the pipeline.
Mm-hmm.
I had a blast doing that. We were there 17 hours a day. There was like I think 5 of us as just green students, and then there were 3 of them in the studio, 4 of them with the producer. There were 3 artists, like lead dudes, taking care of like manning the ship. And we were in this like dank basement office and doing these like 17-hour runs for 2 weeks straight, literally bringing our sleeping bags and like sleeping under the desks. It was so insane. I loved every second of it. Like, I mean, when you're in your like early mid-20s, you've got the energy for something like that. You're just so jazzed that you're like working for the industry. And then after that, that was it for like a few months, because there's no industry at all for any of this stuff in Edmonton, you know. And if it is, it's for like really small projects, like maybe like a commercial for the running room or something. Like nothing. It's not like big work. It's very very small local jobs. But a couple of my friends went to VFS and became like superstars
It's
from
Vancouver
that.
Film School.
Yeah, Vancouver Film School. Yeah, and now we're coming up to when you and I met each other.
Yes. Which,
So I
you
went
know,
to
just up to here, it's a very different path for me to get to VFS. But it's
I know.
Yeah,
I
it's
want to
really.
know. Okay, let me just finish this part
Yeah.
off. I want to let's go to your side because you've got an insane story that I don't know if have you talked about it on your podcast?
Well, I'm
like
writing a book about it,
Oh,
about the
damn,
whole
and you should.
detail. And, you know, I think this is interesting to mention it before going any further, that we're at the 73rd episode of this podcast, and I've been going on for more than 4 years. Starting from the previous episode, who I had two of my friends, I decided to catch up with friends instead of talking to experts, so to speak. So I'm very interested in these moments of harmony that comes out of nowhere, that you started your life in practically a different universe than I have. And at some point we got together and we went our own separate ways, but traces of things that we have gained because of these connections.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's so interesting. So yeah, continue and we'll get to that. We can talk about my story. And one of the reasons I mentioned it, this friend thing, is that my episodes were usually up to 60 minutes. I'm more than willing to go up to 10 hours. I don't care how long it's going to take, for as long as it's going to take. And some people relate to it, some people don't relate to it. But it's the best to be yourself and do what you like to do.
Here. And your podcast is good for that too.
Yeah,
You're really good at gleaning that out of your guests, like getting them to be more natural. Yeah. So went to VFS. Okay, so went as a test. Somewhere in the schooling, my mom and I went to go visit Vancouver, which is like it's not too far away from, but it is still kind of like, it's like a big trip. You do like spring break trips. So my mom and I went that first time I went to Vancouver, and to just check it out and see what's going on. So my friends, they were going to school at Vancouver Film School. I got to job shadow. The school's really good for like, if you just want to show up, they'll put you in a class because they know like once you're in, you'll see what it's all about. And this was like 2008 or 9. No, maybe 2007, like somewhere in there. This is before going there. And I would say this is like the golden age for, I guess, the digital design era program at VFS, maybe just overall, because it was before YouTube, it was before all these tutorials, it was before like esoteric knowledge was coveted inside of this particular school. I think like most schools, that's kind of what they had, was like you have this like very particular industry focused knowledge that is hidden away. It's just there was nothing like that on the internet, and like the only way you could get good otherwise was literally buy a manual and just sit down and read the whole thing. And I do not have the personality or time to read a technical manual. It's just not in me to do that. So spent a day with my friend and his classmates, whom immediately we became friends. We're still very I keep up great relationships with those people at that very specific time. And it was just like the first time I had met someone, a big group of people who got like motion design, got motion graphics, and we didn't have to at all. Like there's like a weird kinship that just happened. I absolutely loved, we were there for a week. I loved that time. Went back, was like, okay, I don't know what I got to do. It was an insanely expensive tuition. I got to figure out how I'm going to get that money. And like got a whole bunch of loans. I was still working.
So how much was the tuition for you? Around 30 grand?
I think it was 40 grand.
So more than sound design.
Oh yeah, probably. Yeah. I think it was like the next up more expensive was the 3D program, the digital design program. But there was also this, there was this scholarship. I think it was like the only time they did it, where they did like this scholarship contest, and you could get a free ride to go in. It was like a full pass, and 3 people got it. And the idea was that they'd have like one of these winners take a different class. They all ended up taking the digital design course,
Right.
and I think that was the last time that they did something like that. So I gotta mention that because the class that I ended up getting into had these superstars, like these 3 really talented designers, but it had attracted like just the luck of that moment that we now were in school together. There was just this like A class, like grade A world class type of person at the time in every facet of life. It was just a perfect intersection and moment for great work and like these insane, crazy personalities and people with insane stories like yours, which I want to go segue into now.
Nice transition.
Yeah. And that's where I met Aga Bahari.
Well, yeah, it was. My experience was very different. First of all, the whole reason that I got into sound design was because my album didn't do that well. My first album, and my expectations were completely a music album. I'm talking about. It was very well received critically, but business-wise, my expectation was just out of, based on nothing. That I'm gonna make really good music and I'm gonna be fine. This will be my job. But no, that was not the case. So I was in Toronto, and the way that I got in Toronto as a refugee, being human trafficked through 5 countries and all that.
Okay, wait. Back it up.
Back.
Yeah. Let's go. Like, go into the high school stuff and like the escape from Iran, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I got to hear this story, man. This is like an insane story.
Yeah, so this is funny actually because I am writing a book about it, and today I was writing about my transition from Shia Islam into Metallica. And the way it happened, now that I'm saying it, I was like, oh, what the fuck are you talking about? But it happened so naturally to me because the whole purpose that I was interested and was attracted to Shiism and mysticism aspect of Islam was just the atmosphere and, the mystery that's in it and a little darkness that's in it, which is in me. And, at the same time, I felt like an imposter. I don't believe in any of this shit. I don't relate to him, but this is something that I can build my identity around it, and it's supported by that country entirely, the system. But Metallica ruined it all for the Islamic Republic of Iran, and I ended up playing guitar. I was playing keyboard before that, electric guitar, which was banned in Iran. So was keyboard when I started doing it. So all of that had to be purchased illegally, underground, basically.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
For instruments.
For instrument, absolutely. Like women can't sing in Iran. Yeah. And that was 1997 when I got my first electric guitar. It was a no-name brand. And in 2002, I co-founded and performed with the first heavy metal band in Iran, period. And we played Metallica for the first time in a public arena. And, when you want to do anything cultural in Iran, you have to get permission from a place called Ministry of Culture and Islamic Guidance.
Oh my God.
So we had to provide to them what we were going to perform. And obviously we played all of our songs like a third of the speed that we would play. No distortion, nothing, very fine. And then we ended up playing Metallica with the pictures of the supreme leaders of Iran above us. So that evolved to a point that I found out in 2006 that I was banned to perform or record in Iran. And the charge, the one that I will never forget, was corrupting the revolutionary youth because of the heavy metal music. And
you should put that on your business card.
Corrupting the revolutionary youth since 2000. I think I'm still doing that, with all the Trump stuff. But I mean, we'll see. We'll see how that turns out. But yeah, our house got raided. My passport was taken. My computers were taken. I was translating a Richard Dawkins book at a time, The Selfish Gene, the translation of all of that. And then I got a summon for a court immediately after. And, I always wanted to leave Iran. And we had opportunities that It didn't happen because my mom was like, hey, you stay here and then maybe go to US to study and then come back here. But then it was a matter of, hey, I'm going to go to prison in Iran.
Yeah.
And who the fuck knows what's going to happen? This is just not a very good kind of an approach to life.
So just out of curiosity, out here, the idea of going into an Iranian prison sounds like a death sentence, and it'll be like a dank, dark prison,
pretty much
overcrowded. It really is, right?
Absolutely.
So I imagine there's like fear, anxiety,
well, it also depends.
Survivalism kicking off.
Well, keep in mind, I've been to prison when I was 4 because our house got raided during Iran-Iraq war. And my entire family got arrested. I spent the night in solitary confinement at the age 4 because I was not to be left alone with a woman as a male child. And, this was something that was very real. Like my aunt, who I was not a big fan of, but she almost got executed because of the period that we were in prison. So all of this is very real. So when you end up with a possibility to go to prison, it is not something that like, hey, I'll go there and come back in 2 months. And it also depends a lot on the kind of charges that are being laid on you. It's a very big difference between being a thief and being a political prisoner. And being a political prisoner is such a wide umbrella that I could have been considered as a political prisoner for corrupting the revolutionary youth. So as you're saying, it was like, it's not going to be pleasant. There will be tortures. You get raped in prison. You can get killed. You get diseases. And so a friend of mine...
It's so much worse than dropping the soap in the shower.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. A friend of my brother's had left about a year or 2 years before that with a fabricated passport through someone that would just get money and put your name in the... It's like a passport office in Iran files for 24 hours and you leave it and he removes it. So the passport is basically valid for 24 hours for you to leave Iran. So I got a passport like that, went to Kuala Lumpur, got connected to a bunch of human traffickers. I was in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, where I had been before, about a year and a half before that, going to a music school. But I went there and stayed for a month with a bunch of other people until we got our secondary passport. Mine was a stolen Canadian passport that they open up a single page and just slide your photo in. And I had to memorize, all of us had to memorize all the information in a passport and the signature, being able to forge it and all of that. So with that passport, I flew to Hong Kong.
In the span of like how many months? I mean, this must have just kicked off super fast.
So October 11th, 2006, I left Iran. And November 11th, I left Malaysia, Kuala Lumpur. We arrived in Hong Kong, me and another guy, with plane, took a bus to the Chinese border, crossed the border on foot, took a cab to Guangzhou.
That's so fucked up.
Which is like the Silicon Valley of China now. But then it was being built. It was insane because you go through one main street in Guangzhou, and everything was so modern. But the moment you would go to an alleyway, it's like you're in 15th century. It was a very eye-opening kind of an experience, and it keep coming back to me considering everything happening with China, that we didn't even know that any of this shit was going on. The surveillance and the kind of totalitarianism of the Chinese Communist Party, didn't think about any of it. So Guangzhou for 4 days, we flew to Shanghai, stayed for a night, and then until then I didn't know where I would end up because they said either US or Canada. But then the day before our flight, it was pointed out that if you want to go to US, they have a law that they can keep you up to 18 months because of September 11th. They can keep you for 18 months if you enter the country illegally, and then they take you out and like, okay, what is your case? And the alternative to that was that we'll take you to Mexico and you cross the border through a potato bag, basically, that someone will... And I was like, dude, I have a very good case to become a refugee, and I don't want to do any of this. I don't want to enter a country illegally. I want to get somewhere to claim refugee. That's it. So I ended up in Vancouver. Cool. I arrived in Vancouver November 17th, and I claimed as an asylum claim, protected person, whatever.
This is 2009,
This is 2006,
2006. Okay.
November 17th, and stayed in the airport detention facility from Friday to the next Tuesday. And the immigration court was happening every Tuesday. And they ask for my identification to be sent from Iran because they want to know that you are, who you say you are. So my documents had arrived by that Tuesday, but they were not translated. So I ended up in a provincial prison, 2 of them. The first one was maximum security, which was unfucking believable. That we got there, and this is a place that they would put immigration criminals there, but immigration criminal would include me and an Afghan guy who killed a Native American with an axe, who was about to be deported. Nice. So we are all immigration criminals. And I stayed there overnight. I cried in the morning. It was so fucked up.
Because you don't imagine going to prison because you've been following the rules as best as you can. That's crazy.
You just don't think any of this. You just know that you got to do what you got to do. And I ended up in a cell with this guy that supposedly were in and out of prison. And it was pointed out to me that he makes more money inside prison selling cocaine than he would outside of prison. And the dude had the habit of sleeping with the TV sound on, blasting it. And by the morning, I remember I was looking out of this window, the barred window, and I could see trees at the distance, and sun started coming up, and I just burst into tears. But at the same time, I had to control myself, because you fucking cry in prison, you're fucked,
Fuck.
And then I was transferred to a pre-trial center close to Vancouver. And I stayed there until the next Tuesday. That was an immigration court, and they heard my case and said, yeah, your case is valid. You're a protected person now. And gave me a piece of paper. I flew to Toronto. My mom's friend had a relative in Oakville, which is close to Toronto. Yep. And I stayed with them one night. The next day, I took a train, went to Toronto, found a place to rent in Dufferin and King. And,
oh man!
And yeah,
that's a good neighborhood. I've got some friends who live there.
It was not a good neighborhood then.
Oh
yeah, it was not a good neighborhood then. I ended up with a crack dealer as my next door neighbor. But whatever, I stayed with the Oakville people for 3 days, and then moved on my own and start teaching guitar, wash dishes, whatever that I had to do to record my album, and made my album with some really fucking heavy hitter players.
Cool.
Like the best at this style of music that I was playing. And anyways, I ended up in Vancouver Film School in 2009 because I was like, well, music, supposedly I can make a living out of music. I wanted to get into politics, but I had a friend who just became a staffer for a senator in the United States. And I played guitar on one of his songs. He used to be a Marine. And I had a conversation with him, and it was like, dude, politics is shit. This is what you don't want to do. And then I came across Vancouver Film School, and I was like, sound design sounds cool. I was also very into gaming. I could get into doing sound design for games and movies and stuff at the same time, make money out of that and focus on my music. So yeah, music for me was always what I was supposed to be doing. It's really interesting because I'm back all the way there. I worked in the industry right after Vancouver Film School, and I worked with really big names. Some of the people that you work with in Toronto, PJ Lee, shout out to PJ, with his company and a whole bunch of other people. So
I didn't know you worked for Asterix.
Yeah, I worked for Asterix for like 3 years, contract, not full time.
Yeah. That's pretty much
Yeah, but because of those kind of connections, I got to work with like Samsung and CBS and a whole bunch of people. And it got to a point I was also doing sound for films, like sound mixing, which I was not into. It's not creative at all, but pays well. And around 2014, it was suggested to me that, hey, you have everything we need to join union. You can become unionized and make a lot of money and be stable. And I thought about it, and I was like, I'm not going to do it. This is not what I want to do, because the business of it was completely off-putting for me. And then I ended up...
How so? Because there's no union in my world.
Oh, really?
Yeah, no, we don't have unions.
Well, unions are the reason, I think, why this industry is down a toilet. Because let's say I'm a sound designer. Then I'll show up at the final mix, and one of the regions are one scene to the right. I cannot go and move it one scene to the left, or the mixer. Sound editor has to be called in to do that and get paid for all the hours that are being wasted. That's one of the reasons that you're seeing the credit of the movie goes on for like fucking 7 minutes. But a lot of the movies that are being made can be made with the third of that crew. But it's the unions that don't know, you have to work with this amount of people. You have to pay them this much. And it's all business. And I was not interested in that whatsoever. You know, I'm a very creative person. And what you're saying with respect to business limiting the creativity and freedom part of it, I think that's a deal breaker. Because you at some point you make the decision, hey, am I a worker or am I a creator? And if you're fine with being a creator, you shouldn't compromise on it. You know, you can take detours along the way. We all have to pay for some things. But, you know, you find yourself, and I think it's finding yourself that makes you happy at the end of the day. But anyways, in 2014, early on, I think it was like February or something like that, I said, no, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to join the union. I became a Canadian citizen in May of that year and ended up winning the green card lottery for United States December of that year.
And that I hadn't seen you for years. And then we reached out. I remember we went to Handlebar for a couple drinks. You literally were just applying for that green card.
Yes. And I don't remember exactly when that was, but my mom a year before that, because the green card lottery thing is every October. So it must have been around September. And I had a huge fight a couple of months before that with my mom. I hadn't talked to her for a while, and she was like, just do this one thing for me. Just, I did all of that things for you, just guilt tripping me basically. And I was like, all right, I'm going to do it. And I didn't even want to do it for myself because I didn't believe in it. I was like, I'm going to do something that I have to then wonder whether or not luck will smile upon me. I just don't want to do it.
You were lucky.
First time, man.
I know.
First time. And yeah, I got it. And here I am in Trump land, South Florida, with the green card. Fucking crazy life. Crazy life. But the lesson of all of this, at least to me, is that you have no fucking clue what's going on. And your only guide is your instinct. Because that's what I've done all my life. And I got a lot of shit for it momentarily. But at the end of the day, it turned out in my favor. Every time that I went against my intuition and used my intellect and logic, I failed at the end of the day, big picture wise. Because what's happening in this world, in this reality, is far bigger than an individual who are experiencing it. So it's a matter of being a log in, not even a log, being a speck in a river and trying to find your way, or just go with the river.
It's the world is too complicated. It's a weird kind of like catch-22, because I'm definitely like a proponent of the scientific method and would rather like to use reason and logic to guide most of my life. But I kind of agree with you. Often I get myself in trouble just going down those like rational routes, because the reality is the world we live in is chaotic and does not, it rubs up against all of that, but like also order and chaos.
When you talk to scientists and technologists and people who are a little outside of the box thinking, what they will tell you is that what you're hearing as a mainstream scientific solutions are not necessarily objective solutions. These are the solutions, again, that are backed by the industry, by the science industry. That just like what you said about this motion graphic design or game or sound design, it's industrialized and it's been made into a business. That we actually talked about this in the previous episodes, that there is a small circle of people at the high level of academia who decide what can be discussed, what can be researched, who gets the grant. Like in physics was the example we used last time. For many, many, many years, decades, the only field that you were allowed to study was string theory. Now, anything else that came, they didn't even pay attention to whether or not it has any merit. It went against the status quo and establishment, get rid of it. It's against the business interest. But the beauty of this world is that you don't rely on those people anymore. You find your own audience, you create your own work. And that's why it's so fucked up when, like in YouTube, they start censoring people. It doesn't matter where it starts because there's going to be no end to it. It's a business interest. People like you and me who went through this and came out of it, we understand this really, really well. And a lot of people don't see it. And that's one of the reasons that I think it's so important to have this kind of a conversation to open up what is happening to the masses.
And double down on like internet anonymity and what that kind of gets you. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think I was listening to a Kevin Rose podcast. He was talking to someone about a new it was one of the founder of WordPress, and how he's kind of currently working on trying to bring, internet discourse, like trying to remove the anonymity. And it's kind of this balance of gatekeeping, your audience, at least in the inset, so you don't get the random trolls in there, like a way to like, this is a place where I want to talk about something, deeply, but I need to know who you are. I need to know you're a real person. There's got to be a process. And because originally WordPress was, an unforeseen consequence, they were definitely part of the like troll culture, just accidentally through, anonymity. I mean, there's good things to that. There's, like if you've got an anonymous Reddit account, there's definitely things you can say. I mean, in my world, when I go onto like the VFX subreddit, there's a lot of throwaway accounts, and there's a reason for that because, if you don't have, it's not a safe space to be voicing or, like shit calling out, one of these big companies that is fucking over their employees, right? You could be blacklisted. This is definitely an industry that has blacklists,
Right. One of the funny things I came across a couple of years ago in Reddit was a guy or a girl, I don't know, it was anonymous, who said, "I've been living off of stealing from Walmart for the past 5 years. Ask me anything." And it was mind-blowing, the stuff that people were talking about. And then Walmart people got involved that, hey, we gonna find you, who you are and all that. But the thing is, the anonymity is inevitable. Because a lot of things that we used to do, when you're a kid, you ring someone's bell and run away. This is an anonymous pranker who've done that. You're never going to see who that person is, can come up with devices and cameras and stuff to catch it next time. But that time, you couldn't do anything about it and you learned from it, right? So I think the internet culture is far wiser than the authorities, whether it's the CEO of WordPress or YouTube or whoever, to come up with their own methods and filters to gain what they want to gain. Because most people don't want to waste their time talking about bullshit. People who, are looking for information. And I think one of the best examples of this is what's been happening in Darknet and Deep Web, that everything is anonymous. And there are drug markets, weapon markets that have been going on over a decade now in Darknet, fully functional on the basis of Bitcoin and now new cryptocurrencies. And people, even though they're anonymous, they depend on repetition. You use the same kind of a username. Nobody knows who you are outside of that world, but you create reputation. So if you don't have a good reputation, people are not going to buy from you. People are not going to sell to you. So the idea that if we don't know who people are in this world, in this physical world, with their ID and a social security number and all of that, this is just a ploy to control people further and further. And I think it's becoming harder and harder for authority to control people. So they're using literally any excuse, any justification to violate people's right of privacy, of anonymity. And they use morality. They say, racism, sexism, and it's all bullshit. It's all bullshit.
I agree. I have nothing to add to that. I also feel like you're much more deeper. I don't know anything about the dark web. I can't comment on it. I have not gone down the dark path yet.
Well, it's very interesting. It's proof of concept for Bitcoin,
Yeah.
a proof of concept for cryptocurrencies overall.
I will say though, my best friend Lance Stewart is someone I've been trying to get you guys connected for a while. He's currently doing his PhD at the University of Toronto in sociology.
Let's have it on podcast.
Yeah, you two should talk because he's almost done his PhD. I think he's only got like a year-ish, two-ish left. And what I like talking about, we used to live together in Toronto, and I'm a dum-dum when it comes, I mean, academia speech, the vernacular is like a word you have to go in and like a word can mean a paragraph. Like it's insane. It's deliberately complicated. So in the academic world, the world that he has to like kind of like communicate with, then trying to dissect that, like how do you, when you're building your dissertation, how do you communicate to me, like the dum-dum? So we'd have like many conversations where I just like lay on the couch, he'd sit down in his like thinking chair, and I kind of ask like, what were you working on today, or what book, because you know all sociologists read many big books in a day, and it forced him to rethink, like to communicate his big complicated idea, like distill it down to something that would be manageable for a dum-dum like
which
me.
is very important. Richard Feynman had a saying, the famed physicist, that if you can't explain something simple enough, you don't understand it well enough. And it's a rule of thumb. And you see that a lot of people you come across, I've seen a lot of it in Manhattan, especially the new modern classical music, that, you know, they smell their own fart and they get high off of it. These are the kind of people who will, you know, in one sentence, they deliberately use like 4 words that you don't fucking understand it. And they look at your face and like, oh, I'm superior to this guy. And fuck those people. I don't want to have anything to do with those people.
I hope you've seen Velvet Buzzsaw. That's exactly like if you've been in any of these like cultural, creative kind of spaces where the hoity-toities are, it's such a great movie that just locks into all those weird mannerisms. You'll have a good laugh over it.
I'll have to check it out. I haven't seen it.
It's made by the guy who did that movie about like paparazzi with Jake Gyllenhaal, Nightcrawler.
Oh my god, I love that movie. I was talking about it to someone today, actually.
Yeah, I love how that movie on the surface is about this guy building his dirty, seedy news station, but I think it's really about vampires.
Interesting.
If you look at it with the filter, like he's only out at night.
Yeah.
The way he's an energy sucker. I feel like it's more of like a metaphor for like vampirism than it really is about what
Very interesting.
the movie is.
Also, it says a lot about the media, how the media works, and it's very relatable to what's going on here right now. This use of fear for the sake of rating and for the sake of business.
Yeah, and I don't know how it's ever going to change. I mean, I suppose it's always been that way.
Well, it's always been that way, but what has changed is democratization of information, that you and me can sit in our offices and in our rooms with completely affordable microphones and headphones and webcam and whatever, and potentially talk to millions of people around the world. So it's interactive and it's unedited. It's unbiased in a way, because even if you have a bias, your bias will be challenged by whoever it is that you're talking to. And if you don't want to deal with it, people are not going to pay attention to you. Authenticity is the name of the game. And I think this transition to whatever the world is going to become after this COVID kind of a situation is really interesting, because of a lot of these news and media personalities are now forced to do their programming from the basement of their house or the kitchen or whatever. And a lot of them are failing because they don't have the makeup and the crew and the producer and the audience and the director to direct them how to communicate with people. And this is a new world for them. that
Mm.
they've completely dismissed for many, many years, that, oh, this is just YouTube, bunch of people, talking about stuff they have no idea about. We are the authority, because look at our studio, look at my paycheck, look at all these people who are screaming my name, and look
Mm.
at my followers on social media. All of that is changing. How fast they're going to change, I think it's a matter of social adoption.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Speaking of social adoption, something that I noticed a couple days ago, I'm going to jump into the technology side.
Yeah.
People are buying VR headsets like it's going out of style. And that excites me, because there's a whole world there that has changed dramatically since it's like 2014, 15, 16, kind of like inception into it. I don't
Yeah.
know if you've been following the VR world at all, have you?
Well, not really, but in the beginning of this whole lockdowns and all of that, one of the things that I mentioned a number of times through these podcasts on my live stream was that one of the technologies that are going to blow up is the VR technology, because it was just so obvious. And it follows a very logical path of creative destruction. Are you familiar with that concept?
Not maybe. No, you tell me.
That you basically destroy an industry, a conventional industry, to build something new on top of it. So, with respect to communication, with respect to content creation, I think this is what's happening with VR. More interesting than that to me is AR and mixed reality. Like
Yep.
Magic Leap, which,
Mm-hmm.
insanely, their headquarters is like 10 minutes away from us here in South Florida in Plantation. Very interesting things, because we are very seriously discussing as a civilization the next mode of computation. That,
Mm-hmm.
we went from building size computers, millions of dollars, to these phones basically that has, more power than a computer that sent a man to the moon. And, we already know that it's possible to have smart glasses, because Google Glass was a beginning kind of an experimentation of that. But again, goes back to social adoption, because people who were wearing Google Glasses, they were being attacked and beaten up by people in San Francisco.
Mm.
And now 5G towers are being attacked by a lot of people who believe 5G causes COVID. So, and I really have gone beyond whether or not it's true or not true, justified or not justified, because we all have to deal with the consequences of all of this, whether or not we like it. And that's actually one of my biggest problems with people from academia, those who are not willing to look outside of their box, because something might make total sense on the paper and will be the greatest idea ever written. But once implemented in the society, you have no idea how it's going to be accepted, how it's going to evolve. And if you want to control it, you've missed the whole point from my perspective, because every single member of the civilization and society has a part in it.
I think that speaking to those academics, I guess I would call them like they become armchair scientists. I
Yeah.
actually don't mean that as a bad thing,
Yeah.
but like the what are they called? Like Hitchens, or like Sam Harris, or like this the debaters. I don't know what I want to call them, like the dark horse internet debaters.
Right. I
Like,
I wouldn't put Hitchens in the same category, but Harris, I totally agree, and Richard Dawkins.
and Dawkins.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like, it's like I don't know. There's like a group where I think mass media, where non-academics like myself want to hear a big idea, but it also seems to be where the rubber meets the road, and they're kind of centered, I think, less so in their own silo, because they're all siloed in their own specific kind of like I guess like train of thought. I'll call it that way, because it seems to change. Once they've delved deep into an idea, they move on to something else. But then counterpoint, they'll find the antithesis, and they'll debate themselves with like the polar opposite. Like the dark horse that of their own idea. Which that to me it's interesting. I do often find myself listening to many podcasts where I'm a big fan of Sam Harris. I like listening
Yeah.
to
Same.
like his debates with the other, I guess, like other speakers, and some of them insanely controversial people.
Yeah. Hitchens, I had the opportunity to go to his lecture at University of Toronto about a week before leaving Toronto for Vancouver in 2009.
That was at the monk school, right?
That was at the monk school,
Oh
yes.
man, that was like the last talk I think he had
Well, he
in
came back.
Canada.
He came back
Oh,
to Canada about a year before I think he passed away.
mm.
Um, and I was at an event having with like maybe 15 other people having breakfast with Richard Dawkins. There's a video of me asking him a question. He signed a book for me. Never met Sam Harris. Was a big fan of Sam Harris because he's one of the very few people who was spot on about political Islam and very vocal about it. Total huge fan of him. But everything changed after Trump.
It did.
You know?
Yeah.
And I have encouraged people to take Trump as a psychedelic because it challenges every aspect of your life. And that's exactly what psychedelic has done to me over the past 11 years or something. It started actually during Vancouver Film School because half of the Vancouver Film School period for me was just taking psychedelics with my roommate and one of our classmates.
Same. Vancouver's good for that.
Fantastic. Man, I used to take 6 grams of mushrooms and just get lost in that park, Stanley Park.
Stanley Park? Yeah. I used to, I definitely wasn't doing it. It was not microdosing or anything like that. I'd go like maybe at our breaks, or like,
6 grams is not a microdose.
Yeah, no, I know. Well, it's all relative.
Yes. That's true. It's true.
But I like pairing up with like 2 other people and going off to Lynn Valley and like dropping acid. That to me is like it grounds you and it's a great place. Like unless you've been to the Vancouver forest, you don't know. It's like a magical place.
Yeah,
I mean,
it really is.
I have like mixed feelings about what Vancouver the city is, but the surrounding area, there's a reason why that city's like smack dab there. That the surrounding area is, I mean, having gone like around the world, I keep coming back to like Vancouver. There's something about the water, the air, the just the place, the type of people, like coming back to that whole VFS, like the fact that you and I connected at that school. It's not just that school. Like there's something, it brings off like an alternative international kind of person, and I love hanging out with those weirdos.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. Like in our class, we have people from Taiwan, from South Korea, from US, Mexico, from all over the place, and I'm still in touch with a whole bunch of those people. Vancouver is a very British Columbia overall, I would say, because I spent a lot of time in Penticton too. The wine country is like 3 hours east of Vancouver. Magical place.
Totally different. It's like Napa Valley. It's a different climate, Yeah, that's what I love about that. British Columbia and even Alberta are like 2 provinces where it has all the climates.
Yeah. Well, we'll see what's going to happen to Canada in the coming years because politically speaking is not very promising. Are you following or you're not really following politics?
Loosely. I used to really be into politics, but I'm not an activist. I'm not actively involved. And man, if I can't take actionable steps to change, I just feel like I'm wasting the limited amount of willpower I have. I loved getting into it in my 20s and early 30s, but now I'm like, I got to be focusing on the next thing so I can retire and not be homeless. Like that, and that takes up all my thinking right now. Like
I think that's a big concern for a lot of people, especially going through this. It's like out of nowhere. You didn't expect it. Nobody told you about it. You're locked down inside your house, and all of a sudden you lost your job that you depended on because most people live paycheck by paycheck.
Yes.
And if it was a couple of years ago, I would be like, those people should have planned better. But shut the fuck up. People cannot plan better for shit that you don't, it just come out of nowhere every 100 years. It's also the failure of the system.
And Canada especially is notoriously in debt. Like everyone is, like, I think the population the most in debt in the entire world.
Yes, they are. I talked about this a lot actually because for 1 year I basically focused on bashing Trudeau and try to get rid of liberals. I do believe that they're a national security threat for Canada, and that was my, it was again my instinct. You got to talk about it. You got to talk about it. It's in your mind. Talk about it. Same thing with Trump. But after this election, I'm done with politics altogether. Because it's not productive and it's becoming completely irrelevant.
Yeah, especially down in the States, it's binary. And I mean, like, we're even seeing it on the, we're going to get into it a little bit. I'll say, like, I'm definitely, like, at a distance, but you can't avoid it. It's everywhere. But even just watching the Democrats and, like, how split that party is, I mean, I think both parties are pretty split, but the idea, I like that I have more than two parties in my political system. I prefer having more. And I'm also a big fan of, like, proportional representation, which is also why I'll never vote for the Liberal Party, because that betrayal was, like, to me, that was it. That was, I never voted for Liberals in the first place, but I was willing to, if they had done just that one thing, I think they could have gotten my vote. That, like, it's such a big deal to have that kind of, like, system in place, but he backed off, like, immediately after getting elected, and that was it for me.
I watched Canadian election live for the first time this last October, and it's just insane. They went through maybe 3 provinces in the east, and by the time they were halfway through Ontario, this is who won, this is a minority, this is a majority, this is a electoral system that is rigged in favor of the east. So people in downtown Toronto and downtown Montreal, they determine the direction of Canada. And it really made me appreciate the Electoral College here in the United States. And it's a very good point of comparison that, hey, look what's happening in Canadian political system. And this push to getting rid of Electoral College, which I don't think is going to happen, but it's only coming from the Democrats, who have invested everything they've had basically in breaking the system just so they can win. Because the United States, if you're not watching CNN and MSNBC and ABC, and you're out of New York, Los Angeles, San Francisco, huge coastal urban areas, U.S. is a hugely red country and hugely conservative country.
For sure.
It's a constitutional republic.
Yes. And I would say, like, even coming in Canada, when the Conservatives were in power, even Harper, who was a hardline conservative in Canada, I'd still put him in, like, he was super left for America.
Oh, absolutely.
If he was a politician in the States, he would be like a Democrat.
Yeah. The Conservative Party right now in Canada is liberal light. And they've compromised in all of conservative values, and it's a pathetic opposition. They're a minority. Are they acting like a minority? No, none whatsoever. And the reason for that, again, it goes back to the electoral system, that if you have a rigged system by design that favors the East, and you see that, hey, downtown Toronto, downtown Montreal, they're liberals, all of them. We have to appeal to them if we want to win. Rather than saying, this system is fucked up. Why aren't we breaking this whole thing and rethinking it?
Yeah, so nothing short of jumping in and playing the game. I mean, like, that's the other thing too. I feel, like, very disconnected with my political system. Like, I don't feel like writing letters to my MLAs is gonna enact any major change. And right now, I don't even have a political system that I would, like, vote for. I don't think I have anything. So thank God that election's over, because if we voted right now, I wouldn't. I guess we just had it, but I don't. What was that, in, like, October, November? We just had our federal election.
Yeah, October.
But yeah, I was in mid-transition. I wasn't allowed to vote.
You weren't allowed to vote. I voted. No. I voted from here by mail, and I voted for the People Party of Canada, which is a new party that they formed. It's a nationalist, very principled kind of things that they were talking about. Hey, we need to protect our borders. We need to not spend so much money. Multiculturalism is being sold to us as a scam. I totally agree with every single one of them. I don't care who is representing it. It's just that nobody else is talking about basically the very fundamental principles of a Western civilization that, has made this country, United States or Canada or Western Europe, into places that people are risking their lives to get to these places. It's not that,
Mhm.
oh, all cultures are, equal and all that. And those motherfuckers, they don't even believe in it themselves, liberals and conservatives. It's just a business.
Mhm.
And they're being exposed. And that's what I'm saying. It's irrelevant now because it doesn't matter who wins the election. As long as you have Twitter followers by hundreds of thousands of millions, you have the ability to change the direction of the country. Right? That's why Trump is so powerful, because he is bypassing the whole middleman, the whole media, which is a huge representative of the time that we're living in, and just directly connect to his supporters through, Twitter,
Mhm.
the most famous for, Instagram, YouTube, all over the place. Hey, let me ask you about deep fakes. What are your thoughts
Oh
on deep
yeah.
fakes? And let me
Uh,
actually show this once again to our audience, this amazing Zoom background. Beeple Crap is one of those dudes that I just love, man. He's so cool, and he's creating um,
Prolific.
yeah, and I got introduced to him maybe about a year ago, but he's been doing this, I believe, for the past 13, 14 years, that every day he come up
Every
with a
day.
new work, and
Something.
he makes it available for free for people to be able to use it in whatever they want. What a legend.
I mean, literally the guy. I mean, I don't think anyone would disagree with this. He is the guy. If you go on, like, for me, my Instagram is definitely like mostly creative focused.
Yeah.
But like the everyday challenge, anytime everyone goes like 30-day challenge or like everyday type or something, it's all just derived from this guy, this one guy who just was doing it long before the social media was in it. I think that's the reason why he like exploded so much, because an internet platform like Instagram came into existence and he just perfectly slot into it.
Perfect for him. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
let's talk about deep fakes, because one of the reasons I showed this is that I obviously am not sitting in a spaceship that is firing at COVID.
Sad.
Uh,
You know what?
sadly,
Sadly, you're not in your own starship yet, shooting in the microverse. Yeah.
hey, it'll be a possibility that, thank goodness we have Elon Musk and his insane mind. We might end up in our own starships in a couple of years. Who knows?
Well, maybe if they get that Star Citizen game finished.
Yeah. But hey, this is a good, I think, indicator of where we are headed with respect to virtual life and digitization, and the way that this, and you're a perfect person to talk about it, because you've been in the visual aspect of things for how many years would you say? 15,
Uh,
16 years?
yeah. Yeah. A decade professionally. Yeah.
And you ended up working on some really, really big projects, right? Like Dunkirk. What others?
I'd say the big one right now is the feature film Code 8. We did that was last year. We worked on that last year. It kind of came out this year. It took a while to get onto the streaming service, but man, it went viral.
Hmm.
That was all because of COVID. Actually, I think it got its like second legs. Like it didn't have. I mean, it was a small Indiegogo movie that I think they got like, I want to say like $30 million all in with investors, but it was leveraged through the Indiegogo. I think they got like a couple million just from the crowdfunding. It was one at the time. It was definitely one of the bigger crowdfunding success stories. And then, but it didn't have enough money to really fuel the marketing engine it needed to get every theater, and it had a limited release. Like one theater in every city in Canada for like a weekend. You're not going to get a lot of money from something like that. But it did have a cult following. The actors they used have, like he's in Green Arrow, the Amell cousins. They have a very strong fan base, and that was leveraged to make this. I really like the movie, and the production level is like insane. And I got to work on the title sequence for that. I think that's going to so far be the one thing I've done that had the most eyeballs. And it's crazy too. Like, you don't know until millions of people in a movie, kind of like the social media messaging that just kind of the strangers that have kind of been finding, I guess, like the people who help make this thing. It's interesting to see who your fan base might be. You don't know, you at best you just kind of shotgun into the void. You scream into the void and you see if there's anyone chirping back at you. It's kind of interesting with this because it's now like if they started in Apple trailers, then they moved into Netflix and I think on Prime as well. And it's funny, like when the regions change, because Netflix definitely cycles. Like the Code 8 hasn't been seen yet on the stream on Netflix in Canada, but I know from my Behance profile, because that's where that was one of the major places where we showcased the title sequence. You'll see like just like a ton of people just showing up. There'll be nothing, 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 and then you'll see like another, and it'll be like a lot of people in the States, and then like a lot of people in Malaysia, and then a lot of people in Vietnam. All of a sudden, you get like this global kind of like pulse, and it's always linked back to when Netflix posted that thing. It worked out really well. The COVID, like, I don't know. I think there's a lot of things in the messaging of the film itself that speaks to what I think people are sort of thinking about right now with the whole COVID quarantine. So yeah, that's the big one.
So it's interesting to talk about the process that you went through, let's say for the past 15 years, to get from, I don't know, to millions of people looking at your work that is being shown on Netflix globally, and how that process has been basically shrunk down for a newcomer right now that can, exactly because of what you said, that you don't have to go to school anymore. You can just watch YouTube tutorials, and the tools are available and cheaper and more widely distributed.
And you can connect with the people, like right. These people who are, like the teachers themselves are A-level, I mean, there's a wide range, but you can connect. There's no wall behind, like it's, if you make stuff and then you show it to the person you were learning from and just keep that up, they're going to want to develop a relationship with you because you're showing the work, like any teacher, right?
Yeah. So having that in mind, I think it's interesting to talk about deep fakes, because I went through this span of live streaming on YouTube for the past 2 years, from talking about, hey, look at this dude talking and Obama is mimicking his mouth movement and eye movement, but you could still tell, to 2 weeks ago, coming across this guy who made his code available on GitHub for free, that you can create deep fakes live for Zoom meetings. Elon Musk popped up in a Zoom meeting. It was this dude. He was just trying it out. And it was funny. The article was like, yeah, it's a matter of how many images and how many videos you feed the system to learn from it. And then they came up with the correction immediately that, developer, let us know you don't have to feed the system anything, basically.
It just does it. That's awesome.
It learns on the fly.
That's crazy.
We went from, hey, I can tell something is wrong, to Elon Musk in live popping up in a Zoom meeting, and the code is available for free. Anybody can do it. How do you see the change that this whole thing is going to cause by, and people who are doing it are people like you and me who are thinking, hey, fuck the industry. I don't want to deal with the system. I just want to be, I just want to fuck around. But
yeah, I think it is. I think there's I don't know if the developers really of that particular toy are thinking any global ramifications. I don't know if they are. If they are, I don't think they would do it, to be honest. I mean, I'm a cynic when it comes to deepfakes. I don't think it's a good thing.
Oh, really? Why?
Mostly because it's so easy to abuse. And if there's one thing we've noticed a lot, even just watching China with the like identity system they keep building up, I don't think it's going towards a good spot. It's funny that the movie we worked on addresses a lot of this stuff. I mean, like it's a tool like anything else, but this tool is pretty easy to abuse and exploit. And I don't know. I mean, I would like to think that if we could, as a whole, like brush up on our critical thinking skills and our skepticism.
We're not going to do that.
But we're not. No, we're not. I know. That's the, like that's the Star Trek universe that doesn't exist anymore. That we're never going to. I think it's it's a weird dystopia that we're all leaning into. I mean, it kind of I don't know. There's nothing I've seen yet that moves the future into a bright, hopeful place. It seems to be consistently moving down to like some not so nice place that's going to have a lot of strife.
Now, this is interesting because everything has a meaning within a context.
Sorry, and I hate that was where like you just asked about deepfakes, and I went into like the dark future.
Well, I mean, I think they're connected for a lot of people because if you can't trust what you're seeing and what you're hearing, what can you trust? But my point is that that is the inherent nature of reality, the uncertainty and chaos. And we are freaking out because the system that we have created and system we grew up with is falling apart. But that system has been the house of cards.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know what we can do as a civilization. I don't think there is. It's funny, again, the previous episode, we were talking about how alignment problem is a very big problem in the AI field, how the objective of your artificial intelligence should be aligned with you ethically and morally. Yet, humanity hasn't got the alignment issue within ourselves figured out. And if you think about it from that perspective, then religions all of a sudden, in their original concept and context, start to seem like very useful things that, hey, don't kill people, don't bury your daughters just because they're women.
Try to be a good person.
Try to be a good person. Thou shalt not kill. And all. Very simplistic, but it's a very clear indicator that people have been dealing with alignment problem for a very, very long time. And now we are creating an intelligence and we are forced to address it, but there really isn't any kind of a specific answer for it.
No. And I guess like getting a little bit more granular with the deepfakes in my own immediate world, if there was a reason to use the tool, it would be, I mean, like the facial recognition is really cool. It definitely enables speaking to that XR, you know, like the AR, VR world, like where digital actors are coming to play. I think that this technology is only going to make that better. We're going to get a lot more realism.
Not for
like
actors, though. It's not going to be better for actors.
It still will, but not necessarily using their face. You know, like it really is coming down to like how the muscles in the face move and reacting. You know, like creating, like sticking on a digital thing to that. You're right. There's a disruption that's gonna. I mean, we're all gonna have to deal with a disruption in our own industries, even in like outside of the deepfakes, but like what AI is doing, even just in like the post-production world, it is taking away a lot of the menial tasks. But it's clear now that we're seeing AIs learning just how to create. People said that like the AI will never be able to create. I mean, we already have AIs that make music that's original and sounds just as good as like a Beethoven. Where we're going to be seeing, I mean, it's starting to happen, if not already there, and I just haven't seen it. There are AI that you can just give it a simple rule and create like a portrait, and it'll start iterating on a portrait 1,000 times. I mean, I don't know if it knows what taste is, but I think that once we can identify how taste is a taste, you know, like look, once there's a level of definition to what that word is, you can train it. Anything that can be like documented and tracked can then be implemented into an AI system that would then start learning itself. I mean,
anything that is quantified can be made into data that can be fed into a artificial intelligence system.
And I would argue any human output is literally a quantifiable thing. Any output that we make. So
ultimately, absolutely, yeah.
So inevitably, we're all going to, you know, I definitely enjoy the fact that I can still make things with my hands, and you know, like, I don't know if as an industry, I don't even know if there'll be that like 10 years and another 10 years, definitely another 20 years. I don't even know if my job will even be a thing.
Yeah, same here.
And I don't even, and then now speaking to that, you know, like getting away from production, there's also like, you know, the ad agency guys that are trying to, you know, the big thinkers, they're trying to like, you know, maybe that's still where there's upward mobility and growth. We're starting to see like, you know, like everyone wants to be a strategist now, because that seems to be where the value is. It's inevitable when idea generation, you know, like input, like what's your problem as a business? You know, that you could have a computer build out like, here's your like brand. I mean, brand discovery is just a series of questions. It's kind of like therapy. You could make an AI that just goes, okay, I see what your problems are. And it also has the infinite power of like computation to, you could plug your business data in and it could find out a solution for you. So it effectively makes human beings, like, once that gets refined, some of the big ad agencies, I think, are investing millions of dollars into controlling some of that IP. But even once that happens, then so what? What, like, that's it now coming into like a little bit more of a philosophical thing. Like, what are we supposed to do? This is interesting about this quarantine. This is kind of like a little rehearsal. What happens when what you do for a living is meaningless? And, like, what are you going to do with your life when our entire, capitalism is just going to leave humans? Like, we're just going to like have robots do it all for us, hopefully in the service of our lives being better. I think it'll just continue to be a rich get richer thing. I think that's why I'm so interested in like the concept and idea of UBI. I don't see any like manifestations yet that I would believe in, but we're gonna have to have like a system where we're still doing our thing and we can still achieve, get our Maslow's needs and lead to self-actualization. That sounds like a great renaissance. That sounds exciting. I love the idea of UBI, because as a creator, I don't have to live in the service industry. I can start making my own thing, right? And not have to worry about, the dark arm of capitalism forcing me to like do things I don't want to do for the sake of survivalism.
So UBI, since we were talking about, I see it as an inevitability. The part that I disagree with UBI in its current form is funding and distributing it. And that is not against the left, because the only interpretation of UBI that is mainstream right now is the left interpretation of it, that we're going to fund it through taxes, and we're going to distribute it as an extension of a welfare state. I don't think that's sustainable. I think it's a terrible idea. And I'm saying it as someone who got my UBI check basically from the Trump administration right now. And there are bills that are being proposed that each American will get paid $2,000 for the next year or so. I don't think it's sustainable. My whole idea about UBI is that you should be getting paid based on your data contribution from data harvesting companies. It makes it absolutely no need to rely on taxation. And it also makes it truly universal and truly decentralized. That, hey, you get this amount from Facebook, this amount from Amazon, this amount from Google, this amount from this and that. And you own your data. That's the biggest thing that we have to talk about. That it's worth a lot of money. It made these companies into hundreds of billions of dollars, trillions of dollars.
Trillions. That's a new, like, trillions of dollars. Insane amount of money. Like a human brain cannot fathom. You cannot grasp that number.
Yeah. So I'm in favor of that. I am not in favor of equality of outcome, that you get paid $2,000 everybody the same way, because it leads to not a good place when you become dependent on government for handout. I disagree with that completely. But UBI as a concept, I just don't see any way around it. And I understand that some people still want to work in mines. Some people still want to do whatever they want to do. But it's that there's not going to be demand for whatever it is that you're producing. Because your competitor can automate and do whatever you're doing with 100 times of speed and efficiency and lower cost and lower waste. It's just the evolution of what we are doing right now. And as you said, it really can lead into a renaissance, the like of which we haven't experienced in our civilization. But it can also lead to a place that, George Orwell's 1984 becomes like, this is a humorous book compared to what we're experiencing right now. So we're at that point, I think, and really understanding who we are through this development of this new intelligence that we're building in this planet, I think is the greatest thing we can do. Who we are in a very spiritual kind of a way, but not spirituality that, hey, just focus on light, meditate on good things, to realize that you have to go beyond this duality of good and bad, good and evil. You are good and evil. You are bad and saint and perfect, terrible and awesome. And you have to love who you are. You have to accept who you are and do what you're supposed to be doing in your life.
And right now, I'm full swing now. I think we're seeing a lot of people getting into like meditation. They're getting into, like I keep coming back to that Maslow's needs. We've got time to kind of look. Well, those of us who are privileged and lucky to have a moment of pause and like, you're not, there's things there where you're like, I can't do what I do. But there's a lot of things that you like, even if you were doing your career, there's so much other things in your life you just weren't even thinking about because you were focused on the career trajectory.
And a
Now
lot
that
of it is
that's
habit,
and
right?
habit
You
too.
don't
Yeah.
even know why you're doing it.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah. It's like the what is that like metaphor? The pot of water with the frog in it, slowly
Yeah.
boiling, doesn't jump out. Yeah. Until
Today is the 8th day that I've been eating only one meal a day. And it happened in such an organic kind of a way that I just don't feel like eating. I'm not going to eat until I need to
yeah.
eat. And I ended up
Yeah.
eating one meal. And man, I feel light and relaxed and focused and centered in a way that I haven't in a very long time without psychedelics.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm beginning to think that this whole idea of multiple meals a day is nothing but a habit that has been pushed through businesses who are selling you cereal, eggs. Oh, breakfast, the most important meal of the day. Follow the money and see how many of the breakfast industry lobbyists are working in Washington right now.
Mm-hmm.
That we are hearing this headline and seeing it all over the place. The same thing with the food pyramid and all of that. And I think it's healthy to become so skeptical about everything. And that's one of the reasons I'm not that afraid of deep fakes, because I think
Mm-hmm.
it really forced people to realize that I can't fucking believe what I'm seeing and what I'm hearing. I don't know. I think that is the time that we're living in, but that is the inherent nature of reality, the uncertainty and chaos. And you create order out of it in a momentary and a subjective kind of a way. Not that some asshole sitting in some chair in some office with certain kind of a suit and a tie telling you this is my idea and you're forced to follow it.
And I think that's what I like about. Actually, in a weird way, I was just thinking about this very conversation we've been having. We had like a little bit of context building to happen, right? Because it would be easy to chop up this podcast into little sound bites of something of like a point of interest.
Yep.
And if no one knows the context of just the little like background story that we just talked about, that could go sideways pretty quickly.
Yeah.
It would be, it's easy to frame that kind of stuff. But again, at time management, like how much time do people have to go deep into understanding the background? I mean, we have to slow down and do that. If the technology keeps going the way it is, we have to, if you really hear something on the internet, you don't immediately just say, I got to put there's a wall up permanently just on every content that I take online, just for the sake of like, if that's your first step, your first guard is to just assume that what you're seeing isn't real. And if it's piquing interest with a giant grain of salt, then you have to go dive deep into the human that is talking, like where are they coming from? In fact, this is interesting. I just downloaded the Waking Up app and have been getting into like the meditation stuff that Sam does. And in his promotion, I think it was on the Kevin Rose podcast. I've been definitely binging a lot of his stuff again. He admits that like the time, his path, they went through a journey of like Sam's life, and like the reason why he is today is because of the, he was like in his like late 20s, early 30s when 9/11 happened, and where he was at academically, there was just like, he was already writing about Islam, and then this happened, so it was just the fuel to the fire. In the same, like a platform kind of emerged, the culture was primed to listen to what he had to say, which moved him down a path which I don't think he, in hindsight, he kind of like reflected on it and was like, it wasn't necessarily where I went, but what I had put out with what the culture wanted, culture pushed me into like a place that kind of like led to where he's kind of going. And I think now in like the full circle, as he's come back to, he's focusing on the meditation stuff, because I think like where the bigger thinking, I shouldn't be saying that, I'm definitely putting words in his mouth, but there's a like the journey and the whole context, like I've learned a lot about his life, and the more that I learn about his life, as the more context that we all get, when someone's talking about a particular point of view that they want to, well, be an expert on, I suppose. Yeah, I'm more likely to listen to that. Uh, but it takes a lot of time, right? Like, and the current internet does not allow for that.
Yeah, and I also disagree with the term expert
Yeah,
because
yeah. I was definitely putting that in. Sorry, I should have bracketed that expert,
yeah,
but
you're expert in a subjective way.
yeah,
Everything is subjective. And I think all of our problems, from Islam to big governments to dictators and throughout our history, is the attempt to solidify this uncertainty and subjectivity. That you come up with something that, like, hey, this is my thought and it's objectively true. And it's nonsense. Nothing is objectively true. There are very few things that you can pin down, with the exception of laws of physics, as far as we understand them. They could be completely wrong too. They could be, we're experiencing them in this reality that we're experiencing. It's not the only reality that can be experienced.
yeah,
But, at the end of the day, I think this whole idea and notion of, hey, I'm a drop in the ocean, but the entire ocean is reflected through me.
mm-hmm.
That is a very liberating kind of a realization that led me to developing my philosophical framework, egology, that you start from being human first, meaning that your only definition of being human, collectively speaking, is your dependency on air, water, and food. And then you become NEOHUMAN, that you come up with a goal and an objective, and you receive, create, and share information on that basis. That's it. And you find your way. You find your way. You find whatever, like, goes going back to where we started, that you realize what you're supposed to be doing. What is the purpose of you here? That is not defined by an expert. It's not defined by a teacher. It's not defined by anybody. It's defined by you, which suggests to me that our most urgent thing as individuals, is to find who we are individually, right?
That's the hardest thing. We spend our entire life doing it.
Yeah, well, for a lot of us, we spend a lot of our life relying on other people's interpretation of who we are or who we're supposed to be. That's why we judge ourselves. Fuck, I'm cheating in the exam. I don't supposed to be doing that. I shouldn't be doing it. Or if you grew up, for example, in Iran or Pakistan, in a religious kind of a family, and skip one prayer, you feel so fucking bad. You feel like, oh my God. Or the same thing with respect to, let's say, climate change, the way that it's being thrown at people by the establishment. That if you're a kid and they're like, hey, humans are causing climate change and that's it, and humans are terrible, you would feel really, really bad if you start thinking, oh, maybe that's not true.
Yeah. I'm glad I'm not growing up right now.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would ever have kids or even adopt, because I don't see, like, the world they're growing up in is like I don't know how parents are doing it right now, like managing the, like, mental health and wellness of their kids with these devices that are consistently doing so many things that I don't know if I'd be empowered to create. I mean, the ones that I know that are off making stuff seem to be doing exceptionally well. Like, I envy those kids that have had such a great early start on something that kind of like locks on to their interest, that's productive. But yeah, man, things like what you just spoke there, even like with we all should be, there is this like giant looming tidal wave called climate change that we may or may not have an ability. I think like years ago, like in the early 2000s, maybe in the late 90s, was when we should have been implementing small, great changes. I don't know if we can fix that now. I don't like, they say now that even like the weather changes so slowly that what the effects that we're dealing with right now are from the 80s. Like this, like it's right. From the effects that we were doing in the 80s. So
it's a system.
Like, yeah, a slow changing system, but I mean, it is changing in a way that negatively affects us as a collective unit. Maybe not necessarily. I mean, the planet's changing. If we were gone, it would keep on,
Yeah,
doing its thing.
absolutely.
Uh,
The thing about climate change for me and a lot of people like me, I don't think it's not happening. I do have friends who believe that it's not even happening. It's bullshit. Well, climate is changing all the time. So obviously it's happening. It's just that if it's a scientific problem, it needs a scientific solution, not a political solution.
Agreed.
And when it's being made into humans are terrible and you have to pay more taxes for it, and this is the only way that it needs to be done, and any kind of a debate, any kind of an inquiry is being shut down as heresy, then especially if you've experienced life under a totalitarian, authoritarian kind of system, you're like, I'm not going to go with you, dude. I don't care what you say. I don't care who you are, prime minister, president. It doesn't make sense to me. But a lot of things are changing. We have a 12-year-old, my girlfriend's Kelly's daughter. She's 12, and I've been in her life since she was 6, 7, since she was going to first grade. And it's interesting because, she has iPad and phones. She needs iPad for her school. So it's not like you can take it away from her. And, she see that we use phone. And like, why don't I have a phone? And she paid for her phone by herself and all of that, her New Year, Christmas money or whatever. And we also had this conversation that where is she headed? You can't control every single thing she does, and I don't want to do that. I hated it when my mom tried to do it, and I broke the rules.
Yeah, same. It's definitely like the tech of the time.
Oh, absolutely. And more you try to control it, bigger rebel they will become.
Yeah, the pendulum swings the other side.
That's exactly what happened to me. So I think it's just a matter of, with respect to kids, to be there for them in the way that they feel comfortable to come to you and talk to you when they need help with something. And when you create the relationship that, I'm kind of your parent and guardian, you're supposed to be following certain things that I'm telling you, but at the same time, I'm just another guy who lived, maybe 20 years more than you, 25 years more than you. So, not that big of a deal. I'm not your boss. And it makes a lot of difference. It's far more relaxing on you as a parent, as a guardian, as an elder. But at the same time, it allows that kid to find his own way, because it can be scary looking forward based on our understanding of the world. But the world that they will be living in, I don't even think we can imagine how it's going to be in 20, 25 years.
No, I mean, today, I don't think anyone thought this was I couldn't have imagined something like this. We had all conceptually, media had kind of like, didn't even prime us properly for like pandemic, there's been stories told about what the future might look like if we fell into a pandemic. Turned out not a lot of it. I mean, maybe one movie kind of got sort of close to it. The one with Matt Damon. It was called Pandemic. I think it accidentally kind of like got pretty close to what we were sort of dealing with. But yeah, I wouldn't have imagined that was something I'd see in my lifetime, but it did.
And we're gonna go through it, and I have thought for the past couple of years that whatever you're afraid of the most is the biggest indicator of what you're supposed to be doing. Because who's someone who I can remember, Joseph something. He has a quote that the cave you're afraid of the most has the treasure in it that you're looking for. And I totally agree with that. Joseph Campbell. And this is one of those scenarios, because not only you're going through all of this mental processing that we've been talking about, it's an opportunity for you to look within yourself, that what is your purpose. It's also that when you get through what you were afraid of the most, it gives you a feeling of success and achievement. And also that, hey, I'm a fucking badass. I made it through a pandemic. You know, so you start becoming freer and freer and freer. That's how I've been experiencing it. That I'm afraid of something. Obviously, it's not like, hey, I'm gonna jump off the roof because I'm afraid of it. I'm gonna do it. No person with a working brain would want to do that. But you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
You do those things, you evolve because of them. Otherwise, you just in this cocoon of comfort, and nothing can go wrong, and deluded like the royal family.
No, I suppose it's once something goes wrong, it falls apart.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. Absolutely. And you can get destroyed. You know, a lot of people who don't deal with the reality that, hey, this person that I love might be dead at some point. My mother and father will be dead at some point. And how am I going to deal with it? If you're not going through that mental process and meditating on that, then when it happens, you're destroyed. Your entire life can be altered forever.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting times, though, man. We're experiencing it, and then we're talking about it, and people can experience our perspective and go and talk about their own experiences, and it's fascinating. I'm loving.
It's so
this time
documented. I know, it's
really
like you know, like I'm glad it wasn't a world war that we all had a shared experience for. Pandemic's not that much. I mean, a pandemic, it's a little bit better because it's something a little bit beyond our control. It's not necessarily war, but yeah. And then now we're gonna look back on this, you know, in the future, and you know, it'll be weird. It'll be like, imagine this being the nostalgia, you know, that nostalgia feeling you had. You're like, oh, remember that pandemic? Oh yeah. You know,
I sure miss those government checks.
Yeah, sure. I sure miss having a government.
Yeah, man. Who knows? Because
so speaking to that, you know, you're writing a book. What
yes.
I kind of want to know what your like day is. I'm always interested in knowing like people who are working on their own thing, you know, like it's not necessarily a career, but it's like something of your own creation that you hope to bring to market. I mean, and you've been doing the podcast already, and I think we've talked at length about what that interesting journey I mean, and you do often on your own podcast, but I don't know what's your day-to-day look like right now? Like give me like a breakdown of a typical day.
My day today is I wake up around maybe 8 or 9, and I read the news, check out social media, and then I start writing. And I'm following what Stephen King I heard talking about, and it's a really cool event. Him and George R.R. Martin, they have a conversation, and George R.R. Martin asked him, how much do you write to be able to publish this many books? It's just insane. And he says that he only writes 4 pages a day, which is 1,000 words.
Which is a lot. I mean, like I've tried getting into writing, and I bet like the flow, I can maybe get like a good day's like a page and a half.
Well, I tell you what I learned from Christopher Hitchens that he used to tell his students, and it was something that was told to him that worked in his favor, that it was suggested to him that you should write the way you speak. And I think that makes a huge difference. It certainly did for me, because I don't think I'm a writer, but I'm a very good talker. And when I can translate that into writing, it works really well. But at the same time, you have to think about, for example, in a class of 10, for example, writers, how many people are willing to listen to one of those people talk for like 2 hours? Right? So I think they go hand in hand, talking and writing. It's just storytelling. That's what it is, basically. And I do that, and then when I do podcasts is usually when we are doing it, so it's around 1-2 p.m. And then I just play music basically for a couple of hours. I'm working also on an album.
Cool.
Until around 5 and 6. Feed the pets and eat my food, and then I just watch the stuff to catch up on YouTube and the news stuff, and usually go to bed around 10:30, 11.
Everyone's getting earlier days to go to sleep now as we get older.
I mean, I haven't had an option because you know, you live with a kid that is a school age, and you got to wake up early in the morning. So my girlfriend does that too. You know, she was driving her to school, but even now that they have distant learning, they have to be in front of their computer by 8 or 9.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not a bad thing, I guess. In early mornings, I'm not a kind of person. I don't think I will ever be able to wake up at like 4:30 or 5 in the morning.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, but I
I, that,
was, yeah,
that is something I want to get into though. Like I've been always a night owl. I will wake
yeah,
up. I can like I get creative when I'm half awake.
right,
There's like a good idea that pops in. Probably it's probably just because my brain is there's too much going on upstairs. Hopefully
yeah,
the meditation fixes that. I'd like to reverse. I'd like to become a morning person. It seems like morning people do a lot better in this world.
yeah. I mean, who knows? You
Who
know,
knows?
Churchill, for example. I think Churchill was waking up at around 10, and he was having his meetings while he was in bed. And
Oh, nice.
he would start his morning with the cigar and the champagne. Just a very unhealthy kind of a lifestyle. Oh, look at Trump.
Mm-hmm.
Trump is eating Big Macs and Diet Cokes and sleep 4 hours a day. And
Jesus.
he seems fine. And I would
Yeah.
imagine that his life is more stressful than than ours.
Yeah, for sure.
So I think it has a lot to do with your genetic and, again, back to habits.
Yeah.
I certainly prefer to wake up around 8 or 9 than 1 or 2 p.m. And I've lived that life. It's, whatever, it worked the way it did. But this is where I am. About meditation, how are you approaching meditation?
Just breathing right now. I'm pretty open to it. I've always been very resistant to it, but to be honest, like I'm not in the city anymore.
Yeah.
The city distraction, there's just so much going on now that I'm disconnected from it again. I'm like, ugh, like I don't think I could have meditated. I like to work. I used to work out a lot when I was in the city. Maybe there's a form of meditation there because there's such a focus on like good form and repetition. But now I am following the Sam Harris little app, and it's pretty simple right now. It's like I think I've got to go through 50 days, and it's an 8 minute, less than 10 minutes. It's just like an 8 minute little exercise. And he doesn't say a lot, but it is really just about focusing on breathing, and then like intermittently he'll pipe up and kind of like bring your awareness to something that might have distracted you, which you might not have even been aware of. So it really is just about that like focus and awareness of what it is happening. And I right now I like the little like insight that I had is it's akin to sharpening a knife. Like that's really what meditation is like. I don't know what the knife is like, if it's your brain being sharper, but it's such a duality of something that is both very um like it passive, but also something very active at the same time. I mean, I'm fascinated by it, and I'm definitely in a space where I can kind of like see where that goes. I've also been like exercising, like I'll do like this morning before we got into it, like I just ran like a couple miles back and forth. I'll probably keep doing that. I got the little Nike app to do really great stretching exercises, and it's really low key. It's nothing like what I was doing. Like I feel like my old workout routine was modeled after being the nerd I am. When Superman came out, when Henry Cavill, he had like a Superman workout that they put up on like Men's Health. I was following that religiously, but that was intense, like way more intense than what I'm doing now. Right. Like but that's enough. It's just enough to like wake the body up, feel good, and then like get your heart rate up. And then after the cool down, I've had a cup of coffee, I can just sit outside for a bit and like do a little 8-minute thing and then go about my day. And I definitely feel a lot more present about life, but also life is not as nearly as hectic as it used to be.
Have you watched Midnight Gospel on Netflix yet?
No, but I will do that.
Oh
right
my God,
now.
man!
I'll cue
I
that up.
binged watched it on acid, and
Oh,
it's a masterpiece. The animation is done by the creator of Adventure Time, and the series is created by Duncan Trussell.
oh, this is his thing.
Yeah,
Cool.
yeah.
Okay, that's queued up.
Since we're talking about meditation, something really interesting I learned watching that you close your eyes and try to feel your hand your arm from inside. And you do that with one arm, then add another one, then add one leg, then add another leg, and then do all of them together.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the closest I got and the quickest, I have to say, quickest and closest I got to the feeling of presence when you're
Mm-hmm.
doing that kind of meditation. And I've been doing Zen. I have to say, I did Zen for maybe about 2 years religiously, about like 7, 8 years ago. This was very interesting kind of an experience. My turn off with respect to Western meditation has always been that it's defeating the purpose by telling people, hey, try not to think, or try to do this, try to do that. Because meditation, to me, coming from, like, I had experiences with transcendental meditation when I was younger, but Zen mostly is my meditation school. That, the point of Zen is not to sit down and think. The point of Zen is to just sit down.
Sit.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's maybe that's kind of what Sam's current, at least his like introductory course is just like this is about less. This is just about sitting and being still. It isn't about more. It is about like the stillness and the less of things. So
yeah, because trying not to think is defeating its own purpose.
yeah, I think it's really like what you're trying to warm up to or kind of get into is the like first being aware of your thoughts rather than them being like just a thing going. Like I definitely have a pretty negative internal dialogue that goes on, and that
I think most people have.
does. Yeah, and I'm very aware of it. It is bugging me. Like I'm like when it happens, it's literally like if there was a super cynical asshole right here. I'm like, shut the fuck up. Like get out of here. I don't want you here right now. Like so yeah, definitely gotta like. I think that's what the meditation's kind of like. There's an awareness of this thing, and in other like people I know that have taken Sam's little courses have been able to like the way that they're talking. I don't think they get too much in the specifics, but it's like an awareness of that thing, and there's a there's a disconnection that can happen, but not. It's an awareness that is who you are, and like. You have to learn to live with that, but also,
that actually
acknowledge the reality,
yeah.
but don't let it run the operating system like it is right now.
So this is what I was told by the Zen master that I came across in Toronto, which the way I met him is also very magical, but that's a story for another day.
Mm-hmm.
That he said thoughts are like birds. You can't stop them from flying above your head, but you can stop them from building a nest above your head. And it's a very interesting kind of way to look at it, because the voice inside your head is not who you are.
Mm-mm.
The voice inside your head is who you supposed to become based on the societal and cultural expectations and everything that has been. This is going back to instinct versus intellect. That's the intellect. And it will never go away. But the difference is that you become an observer and it's just there. And you don't get involved with it emotionally.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a realization. Once you realize it, there is no going back. And it's a beautiful thing. So
I think that's what I like speaking to psychedelics, that to me, having never meditated, I think I think part of being a creative is once you get into flow, you kind of get close to that state.
Yeah.
Like there is a oneness. You're just focused on what you're doing, and all things go away. That's probably that's what's addictive about being a creative. Yeah. Once you get into it, you find it. But yeah, when I the first time I dropped acid, that was like the moment of oneness that I think a lot of meditative, or a lot of people who practice meditation strive to get through, and it just like 3 hours in, you're just one with the universe. It was a profound moment for me. Being an atheist, the best way I could have described that moment was like a conversation with God. Being someone like that's the best way I could describe that one feeling. But now maybe it was just more of like a wholeness feeling, right. And oneness, an awareness of everything and nothing. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, psychedelics, I don't care how much you do meditation, certain things you experience on psychedelics are just, you cannot experience it in certain ways.
Yeah.
In any other ways. But Alan Watts said something really interesting, that psychedelics are like microscopes. You don't see a biologist with his eye glued to the microscope. You see what you see, and then you go and do things based on what you've learned. So more than 10 years. And I celebrated my 10th year anniversary of first time I took psychedelic anything, which was a mushroom, 2 grams of mushroom, life changing.
Mm-hmm.
I celebrated that November 11th last year. And since then, it's been very interesting because in the flow without the need of any kind of a substance or a medicine whatsoever. But it's an understanding. You get to that understanding. It's like you see something that you cannot unsee. You realize something that you cannot unrealize, basically.
Yep.
Awesome times, man. Awesome times
Yeah.
we're living in.
Yeah, I know, right? It's weird.
Yeah, I'm loving it. I'm loving it because what's the worst that can happen to you personally is to die. And dying is not that big of a deal to me. Have you smoked DMT?
Yes, I did not have a good experience.
Really? Which was that a toad or
I
like
just remember, I couldn't tell you. It was a friend of mine had some and was speaking. 2 of my friends had tried it and had the like Joe Rogan experience of DMT. And I'm like, hey, I was going to try it out. It was on my birthday, and that was their gift. But the experience I had, I don't know if I smoked enough to get into the state that you need to go to, but I did not like what happened. It was like it was the antithesis of what I had experienced. Maybe because I came in with an expectation that it might be something like acid, which was indescribable enough experience, and like DMT is another level of indescribable.
yeah.
Like even if you were to bother to record yourself, I know a lot of people like to do that, and you try to describe the waking dream you sort of had, it sounds like nonsense.
Yeah.
It's not something you can describe, but I think the feeling I had was utter void, utter blackness. It was not a good feeling. Like, I know people say that that's what, like, you get flushed with DMT before you die and you get some sort of something out of it. I hope it's not that, because if my last moments of existence was that experience, that to me is like a traumatic way to go. I suppose it doesn't matter after, who knows. I just don't want, like, I don't know. I don't I'm going into like speculation, but I imagine the last fraction, unless you get misted or something, but like if you just die, your body shuts down. I think like time either speeds up exponentially or it slows down exponentially to those last moments as your brain is trying to fire on
Slows
all
down
cylinders.
supposedly, yeah.
Yeah, so
I would say you haven't you didn't smoke enough. No.
Yeah.
Michael Pollan, I don't know if you know him. He's a writer. He wrote a very well-received book about psychedelics. Kelly has written. I can't remember the name, but he also had this similar negative experience on DMT.
Michael Pollan.
Yeah, very well known. I should try to get him on the podcast. That would be very, very interesting. But he also didn't have a good experience on DMT. Quite honestly, if I want to stick to any kind of a psychedelic at this point, it would be only DMT. And the natural DMT, which is 5-MeO coming from the toad. That this is one species of more than 7,000 plus amphibian species that generate the psychedelic poison that you can milk and dry and smoke it. And you don't have to do the 3 hits that you do with concentrated DMT. You take one. And I've done it 3 times. The last time and the third time I did it with the guy who facilitated DMT to Mike Tyson. And he's actually in Mike Tyson's first episode of his podcast that he started doing it after DMT. And that was the most beautiful, insane, craziest experience I've ever had on any psychedelic, period. And it was one hit. I was gone for 25 minutes. Couldn't feel anything.
25. Wow, that's a long time for DMT.
Yeah.
Cool.
And when I came back, I asked people who were there, I was like, was I screaming? Because you don't even know if you were screaming or whatever you were doing. And they were like, no, you look like Buddha. And the guy came to me, the facilitator, and said, but was your soul screaming? And I said, no, my soul was not screaming. And my friend who went after me, he got into this animal noises and very sexual kind of acts, reached for his growing and made the sounds that you couldn't even imagine this guy would ever be able to make. And when he came out of it, I'm like, oh, what happened? What did I do? I was like, you were not having a good time.
It was noisy.
I think it's just it's the ego thing because
Yeah. Okay, so I know like with like mushrooms and acid, it typically, I think like the environment has a big thing to play with whether you're going to have a good experience or not.
And your
I think
mindset.
And your mindset too. Yes, of course. But I think like anyone who takes acid and goes into like a dank dubstep concert's probably not going to have a good time. I don't know. I mean, unless that's your real dream.
Could, that could, yeah.
But I feel like most people aren't going to have a good time doing something like that. But DMT, it doesn't matter, right? Like you could be anywhere because when that stuff kicks off, you go away for a bit.
So it's funny because the guy facilitator, he was telling me about this one guy, because you smoke it and he's lighting it for you. You inhaling, he says 8 seconds, but I do it for 11. I do 11. You inhale for 11 seconds and then you hold it for 11 seconds. And once you exhale it, you're gone. He was like, he gave it to a guy, and when he exhaled it, it hit the fire alarm, fire detector. Yeah. So water started coming out.
No.
Water and the bill, like.
And, what do you do?
And they are freaking out because this one guy is tripping balls. He's gone, and all of the rest of the people running around how to stop this. But when the guy came out of it and said, "Did you notice what happened?" He said, "No." He didn't hear the bell. He didn't feel the water. Nothing. So no, you don't even feel your body. That's what I mean. That you could be screaming and throwing up and. All of that. That's why it's so important to do it with people who because a lot of people get, sexually harassed and abused and stuff because you're gone. You don't know. For 20 minutes, you're gone.
You're comatose. Yeah.
Yeah. But hey, maybe one day again you do it and it works. Whenever you're supposed to be doing it, you'll do it.
Yeah. I'd do it with you, man. Maybe one day with this. I mean, I was supposed to come visit you.
Do it, man.
A couple of years ago. Maybe one day I'll come down there, but I gotta finish this transplant to Vancouver and get my life set up again.
Yeah, right on. You're moving to Vancouver?
Yeah, that was the intention. I left Toronto in October. It's just kind of done with. I think my story is done with Toronto.
Yeah, same here.
And I feel like, I mean, I had a great experience, and look forward to visiting it often. I got great people there. But this West Coast is calling. And I just, in my life, in my career, there's so many, I'd like to own property out on the West Coast somehow. I know I've got some friends that used to live in London that moved out to the island. Which one? Hornby Island. And he runs an ad agency out there. He's doing the remote thing already. And I like the idea. I have for maybe the first time outside of my career, I think I've been so focused on the becoming a professional creative. Now that that's kind of locked in, and things are changing with that, even I'd rather, it's a good time for me to reset everything. And I like the idea of the forest, where the forest meets the ocean. There's something about that.
That's awesome.
My parents, I'm out at my parents' place right now, and they're in the middle of nowhere on the foothills of the Rocky Mountains. And this morning, it's springtime, so there's smells, there's the only thing that's happening is the creeks sounds and birds chirping. It's that, having that as your day start, and not screaming bikers or the non-stop low reverberation bass that happens in any big city. It's not there. There's a stillness. You're a lot more productive. At least I'm a lot more productive, and I like the idea of going into the wilderness and working my ass off and making something cool, and then emerging from the wilderness and flexing, having time. I like visiting cities. I I love going to LA, even consider maybe living there, but I prefer the idea of maybe living near a city, but not in it.
Yeah.
In isolation, really, to do what I want to do. I mean, like we're so connected now anyways. Like
Oh,
this whole
absolutely. Yeah.
this whole experience I'm like totally fine with. Like I enjoy the fact that I haven't been seeing a lot of people except for on having great long conversations like this.
Yeah, same here. I mean, I live all my life in cities from Tehran with like 12 million people to then Toronto, and then I live in Manhattan. Vancouver probably was the closest I got to living in a smaller kind of like a little bigger town, smaller city.
Mm-hmm.
But where we are now, it's suburb of Fort Lauderdale, and this is like, we're surrounded by nature and trees, and the weather is super nice here. If we want to go to Miami, it's like 40 minutes away, but I don't want to live in Miami. And Toronto, man, that fucking gray sky for half a year. I remember waking up every morning, looking out a window, gray. It was like, shit.
I mean, Vancouver's no different. It's worse, but
right.
I'm actually totally okay with the gray. I'm okay with the gray, but it's different because there's no nature.
But
You're looking
Vancouver,
at gray skyscrapers.
Vancouver, when it's not gray, it's so fucking amazing.
Yeah.
That you're like, hey, I need to stay in for that 4 or 5 months that all it's happening is raining, and just create and focus on what I'm doing. But Toronto, as you said, I have dear friends in Toronto and very good memories in the city, but I don't want to live in it anymore.
No.
I think I did my part, and looking forward to go and visit them. And also, last year we spent about a week in some private island 3 hours north of Georgian Bay.
Mm-hmm.
So amazing. It's just so beautiful. Saw a beaver for the first time.
Really?
Yeah, on Canada Day, swimming at 9 p.m. The chillest animal I've ever seen in my life.
Vicious. Don't get close. They're good to chill until they're not. Those teeth are literally things that can kill like dogs.
Right. Well, they make dams and stuff.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
They're good.
Yeah, I like them.
Yeah,
I like them.
That is the weird thing about Ontario. I'm glad I knew I was probably going to leave last year. About this time last year, I had a pretty solid idea that things were going to have to change. So me and a couple friends went up to Lake Huron. And that's like, for a lake that big, it looks like a lake you'd find out in like Banff. Like it's got this like turquoise clear, immaculately clean cold water. And there's a place called Tomarin, and the Flower Pot Island, which is what I wanted to go see. And it's these awesome sandstone geological formations that have formed that look like flower pots that kind of ring this one island.
Wow.
Tobermory, that's what it's called. And you take a boat from Tobermory out there, and the boat's got a big glass bottom, and there's shipwrecks all the way there. So your boat literally drives over other boats.
Wow.
And like stops, and it's so cool, man.
That sounds
awesome. It was like, next time you go, go check it out. It was like a nice day trip. I think it took us like 5 hours. The campgrounds are awesome. It's like clean, fresh air. The universe, it's like, it opens up on that lake too. So there's like the universe too. And it's like, there's no light pollution or anything out there. So you really do feel like you're in it.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I'm glad I got to go see that.
We're supposed to go back in June. I don't know if they're going to open up the border by then. Because Kelly's daughter has been going to a summer camp in the north of Toronto for the past 3 or 4 years. And yeah, we wanted to go back to that island. And then I supposed to go in the middle of nowhere in the forest in Sweden to attend a guitar camp in August.
Whereabouts?
Close to Gothenburg.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, and initially I was thinking about going to Finland and then go to Denmark and then Sweden, go to this camp, and then go to Norway, to Oslo, take a train to Bergen, and then fly back. But I don't know if that's going to happen.
Oh man, that sounds like a great trip. That's definitely, that area is like, I love to go to Iceland. I'd love to go see it.
Yeah,
just that black, that darkness, I want to go see.
I mean, it's a place where Bjork comes from, so
yeah. So the people are fun.
Dude, we've been going on for more than an hour. This is a record. This is my longest podcast so far, and
nice.
It's awesome. It's awesome. Great to have you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was a nice little chit chat.
Yeah, man. Yeah, for
We
sure.
talked about everything.
Yeah, well, I mean, why not?
Yeah.
And hope to see you at some point in Canada. Maybe we come to BC.
Yeah, I really hope that I can like find a sweet spot where people can just come and like hang out. I like the idea of like maybe making an accidental retreat. That would be
Well,
cool.
we have that place here, so feel free to come and visit anytime that you got
Yes.
too cold in Canada.
Yeah, maybe in the winter.
Yeah. Let me ask you the last question I ask
Sure.
all my guests. That if
Okay.
you come across an intelligent alien from a different civilization, what would you say is the worst thing humanity has done, and what would you say is our greatest achievement?
Hmm. The worst thing that we've done uh uh is I guess like we're a greedy kind of people, and that greed has kind of ruined our house that we live in, um and yet I mean like it's a weird thing. Greatest thing that we've ever done, I feel like it's the greatest and worst thing. Like we've kind of like taken the planet over and we're like reaching for the stars. We're trying to get out there, but we still haven't figured out things in the backyard yet. So maybe can you help us? Can you help us, like, make sure that that we don't suffer, like the people at the bottom, or the idea that there's a bottom? Like can we help like those who need help without our greed taking over? And at the same time, can we like go to Mars? I think that'd be pretty cool.